How do we become best in class or top in? It's because we managed fear. We just never called it fear. And one of my missions is to change people's relationships with fear, because fear throttles everything you do, from who you talk to, therefore, who are your friends and who you marry. Fear will change how much money you can make or what job you have. It will determine how much weight you can lift. Most importantly, fear is going to determine whether you defend yourself or your family or not, or whether you're a courageous bystander.
People think you're this advocate for violence, and it's really the exact opposite. What you really want to talk about is how you could impact people in a much bigger way. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about your process and your journey so people understand what your real mission is, and that it's the exact opposite of what most people might attribute it to.
Yeah, it's funny. It's counterintuitive because the original Roadhouse line there. I thought you'd be bigger, right? When they meet Patrick Swayze's character, when they meet Dalton. So people look at me and they go, "I thought you'd be bigger," but they also, the joke is, they think that I'm like, "Oh, look at this fight, look at this violence, look at this shooting, look at this stabbing, look at that." I hate all that shit. It makes me queasy. I don't like looking at it. I've had the honor and privilege to train not just some of our nation's tier one operators, but all over the world. I've been in this industry now, you mentioned it, like over 40 years teaching. And I've been all over the world, and I've worked with like amazing tier one operators, entrepreneurs, big companies, but I also do stuff, whether it's school teachers, kids, soccer moms, whatever, the whole, and it's neat. But people, when they first meet me, it's like, "I thought you'd be bigger." It's a joke I make, because my perspective on managing violence and managing fear is counterintuitive. They think I'm like, "Let's go," and I'm like, I tell them I abhor violence, which is why I study it, and I'm afraid of fear, which is why I study it. Because I know that fear creates doubt, doubt creates hesitation, unchecked hesitation becomes procrastination. If that's a business deal, I go, "Scott, okay, I'm ready to go." You go, "Dude, I did the deal yesterday." "Okay, I'm ready to buy the house." "Oh, sorry, you lost your chance." "Okay, I'm gonna do a shot of tequila." I walk up and I'm about to ask the girl for a date. She goes, "Oh, sorry, this guy just..." Like, timing is everything. Business loves speed, but violence loves speed. If you don't have the mind speed to manage everything coming at you, and so the counterintuitive part, and I just started telling 9 things at once, but it's this idea of my fear of violence and fear of fear forced me to look at it differently, because rather than putting my head in the sand, like most people, when they learn that I teach self-defense, holistic self-defense, the science of self-defense, our program is really the only program, go off on a mini tangent here, where we study physiology, kinesiology, and psychology. So we're not showing people like, here's a complex motor skill, blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is the neurobiology of sudden danger. This is what your body will do, and it'll bypass executive function. It'll hijack your cognitive brain temporarily, and you will have this primal response. And this is for trained people and untrained people.
That's awesome.
And when they hear that, Scott, they're like, "Holy shit!" And then the counterintuitive part is they find out that I don't like this stuff, but I do it because when I see violence and someone goes, "Hey, look at this person couldn't get away," my first response is like this. And then I'm like, "Oh, I want to throw up." And then I start to study, and I go through that phase because I immediately imagine the fear of the person that didn't have a solution in that violent encounter. And that's what really, and this is going back in the early 80s, inspired the whole system. So it wasn't just macho bravado, okay, if someone's in your face, hit them first. It was like, wow, how do I overcome the first reaction for a good human like you or I is denial. I don't believe this is happening. And then denial gives way to psychological fear, where you start visualizing a negative outcome. And then now you're eating up time. And now suddenly when it's time to run or fight, our body is overwhelmed with emotion. Anyways,
I love, by the way, I love tangents, and I love where the brain goes in a natural conversation is exactly what I and anyone listening to this kind of show is going to want to hear, because the truth is that's where the raw stuff comes from. That is exactly
that's the flow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear. And I'm going to go right back to something we were talking about earlier, because I think it really will pound the punch that we're pushing out there to everybody. And that is, in one of your interviews, you said that victims that fought back don't have the same level of struggle or PTSD of the victims that cooperated. And I shared with you that listening to that, I got chills, because as a child, I witnessed a break. I was a part of a burglary and a sexual assault and on a babysitter, and the story's out there for anyone that wants more details. But the truth is, I actually I had this small baseball bat and ran at the guy with the knife as he was poking the young lady in the back, and swung at him, and he chased me back to my room. And the point that I was getting at is there was a level of understanding, even describing the person to the police, of how they told me as a child that there was some level of hero attribute. I remember that feeling of like, I'm doing everything I can do and controlling it. And one other aspect that's really important is the fear that I felt as a child was so embedded. There were nights where I couldn't sleep. There were nights where I would get up in the middle of the night and I would freeze in the hallway walking to my parents' room because I couldn't move anymore. Like, I was absolutely broken in that capacity. But I self-talk and I self-coached, and I started to build myself in and around all the outlets. And at 44 years old, I can tell you, I have a peripheral that is so unique and so different. And it all comes back from the fear I felt at a very, very young age. And I share a little more in depth of the story with you just so that you could kind of add some light to that. But your comments, when you make those comments, and I shared that with you, you started to share a part of the impact you're making. And I wanted to just compliment the words, because it's good to hear stuff out there that isn't just focused on the trauma and the problem. It's also focused on future solutions, because fear is something that yeah, the more you practice it, the more you're actually comfortable in those spaces. You don't want it. You're avoiding it, is what you just talked about, but it's something that does provide an edge if you're prepared. And so, from a childhood trauma to something that you're discussing today, the words were just so empowering. Now I'll be quiet now. I went on the tangent, but I just felt like I would give you some really good stuff to talk about.
It's great. And it's interesting. What's the best way to dig into this and dive into this? So I like to make this joke that fear management needs new management, meaning like fear gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
And none of us wake up, let's say you had a great day yesterday and you wake up and you're like, oh man, I hope something catastrophic happens today so I can practice my resiliency. Like, nobody wants bad shit to happen. But so fear's a weird emotion. And I wrote an article about this on Monday, where I said, fear can hit us. It's unsolicited. It just hits. You're not here. You go, that's a rattlesnake. I'm not afraid of snakes at this distance, but if it gets closer, like, you don't thinking like that. You see the snake and you're like, right away, you're like, so unless you're, like a snake charmer or tamer, or, you're like, holy shit. And it's instantaneous. It's instinctive. Right. But there's another type of fear, and that's a psychological fear. And the psychological fear is us imagining stuff. And that's really where our research separates from conventional performance psychology and fear management. And I want to come back to your story a little bit, but I'm kind of like laying some context here.
No, I like it.
When somebody, let's say, and I'm wearing our no fear shirt, and because for those of you who aren't listening, you can see what the shirt says. Those of you who are just listening to an audio version, it's spelled no fear, but it's spelled K-N-O-W. In other words, if I get to know fear, I will change my relationship with fear. If I can change my relationship with fear, I can change my mind. If I can change my mind, I can change my trajectory. Most of us are kind of like fear is the wind and we're the sail and it's going to blow us wherever. And that's what I mean when I say like fear needs new management, because as a kid, I'm 62 now. As a kid, I never had a coach, a teacher, my mom or my dad, a friend or a mentor say, fear has use. Fear is useful. Fear is fuel. Fear prepares you to manage danger. Nobody ever had a positive thing to say about fear. And it was interesting to me, because when I discovered the power of this kind of like counterintuitive pivot on fear, I was like, holy shit, like all my coaches who I thought were coaches weren't coaches, they were just trainers. In other words, there's a division of my company where we train coaches. And we tell them, if you don't understand how to help your athlete or your client manage fear, you're not a coach. A coach should only be about inspiring a better performance from this morning or yesterday. We did this, we can get better, because we're bridging the gap between capacity and potential. And what changes everything in there is our mindset. On game day, you're not going to be a better athlete. You can't change your stamina, your endurance, your fast twitch muscle fibers, the neural patterns of the skills that you've developed. So if I say to you, Scott, you got a book, you got a great message, and hey, fly to Austin. I just booked you on Joe Rogan. If you shit your pants going, holy shit, Joe Rogan, that's the biggest show in the world. In other words, if you get in your head, then you get on there and you're like, and Joe says, okay, talk. And you're like, right? That's, I mean, number one fear in the world. You know what it is?
Public speaking.
Public speaking. It's not, you know, getting dragged to a secondary crime scene, tortured and murdered. You would think that'd be more scary than public speaking, right? It's not like number one fear in the world, like being a shitty father. Number one fear in the world, being a horrible parent. Number one fear, not raising my kids so that they can go forth and conquer, right? It's don't ask me to do a speech, you know, like, and it's funny. Number two, like, and it's I think number 2 or 3, and I don't know if this is current, sharks and loss of security, loss of a loved one. And it's crazy. But anyways, all of that, the question and the answers are all psychological fear. They're not visceral fear in the immediate sense of an instinct. Like if we're playing golf somewhere or on a hike and we hear like a rattlesnake, our nervous system doesn't go, Scott, is that like a small tambourine band around here? Like you don't think it's a small tambourine band. You go, that's a snake.
Yep.
And our nervous system errs on the side of survival. And that's one of the reasons why we can go from parasympathetic to sympathetic so fucking quickly. And so all of this is kind of like this tangential rant is, how old are you when that incident happened?
3. I was approximately 3. Yeah. And
okay. So
I grew up in a big Italian Catholic family. So my verbal, I was the firstborn grandson in a big family with 5 aunts and a grandmother, a Sicilian grandmother. So I was a very coddled and far along young toddler, but somebody that,
but still,
it was an HD moment. Like some of those moments, Dr. Don Wood, if you don't know him, he's phenomenal, but he's out of Orlando. And he says that your HD, your severe traumas in your life are basically imprinted at HD, and your subconscious reacts.
HD is what, hard drive? What
HD,
is it?
no, HD, like high definition.
Okay,
like think of it like the highest quality television you've ever watched in your
Total
life. UHD.
Imprint on your psyche.
Yeah, and your body goes immediately back, as if when you start to think about those things, a lot of times the body's subconscious response is to go into fight or flight in those moments immediately. Right. And so anyway, I was a child. To your point, I was a child.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting, like some of our stuff is counterintuitive, but I've got like one of the guys on our team, he's a 20-year psychologist. In his real life, he's a psychologist, and he's part of our mobile training team, and he, teaching the self-defense stuff. But a lot of people who come to me for personal safety training don't realize that if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom tier is survival, procreation, right? Tip of that is self-actualization. So when people learn martial arts, the self-actualization metaphor is, I want to look like John Wick. Some guy sticks a gun in my face. I want to go flip him, twist him, dive over here, shoot this guy. Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris. And that's what we practice. When you go learn martial arts, you're learning complex motor skills. Nobody stops and goes, wait a minute, in the history of violence, there is zero evidence that anyone has ever moved like that. We don't stop to fucking go, we're practicing all these moves, but there isn't even a single demo, a body cam, helmet cam, surveillance video of somebody doing any of that in a real fight. In the 80s, I noticed that. I went like, wait a minute, like all this stuff we're practicing, I've been in some altercations. I remember being really afraid. I remember tunnel vision. I remember tachypsyche, which is a big fancy word for things went into slow motion. I remember throwing telegraphic shit, breaking my hand in fights, going, and then afterwards, the 15-year-old, the 17-year-old, the 18-year-old lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, going, why do you wait so long? Why do you hesitate? Why is your heart pounding so much? How come and I was like a high level, I was a really good boxer, Taekwondo, I had wrestled. Like I was going, none of my complex motor skills were there for me. And I was conflicted by that. And it made me start to look at managing violence differently. And one of the epiphanies I had, big fancy word for light bulb moment, is, and it became language in 1985 when about 5 years after I had started doing scenario training only. We were actually doing in the 80s, Scott, the equivalent of Fight Club before Fight Club was a movie, but we weren't doing it bare fist and we were doing like head protection, gloves on, but we would do these scenarios 6-on-2, 3-on-3s, 1-on-1. We would take real incidents that happened in the news or a rumor of a fight, and then we'd recreate the beginning, and then it was freestyle once contact started. So it was like really exploratory and way advanced for its time. This is like my first event was in 1980. And then we would get together, and every month we do these seminars. And they're like, a guy would come in, cauliflower ears, busted nose, bouncer at a big club. And I go, shit, that guy's big and scary. Everyone's on the release. We would do these scenarios, and I'd go, like a guy who I thought it would fight really well, like tapped out, turned away, and somebody who I thought would just get mauled, fought like a badger and did really well. And I realized that the distinguishing factor wasn't anybody's experience or their physique, it was their mindset. And you've experienced, we've got some mutual friends who are like retired SEALs and stuff like that. Like some of those badass guys are 5'7", 170 pounds. They're not the Rambo, Schwarzenegger looking guys. And there are some, like, I got a friend of mine who's, out of the unit, retired, but I look like a hand puppet next to him. Like he could be a ventriloquist, and it's like, yeah. I'm a Tony doll, and it's like, he's going, say something, Tony, and I'm going, hey, Joe, like, he's huge. How he did ropes and the obstacle courses and shit like that, because he's literally 245 pounds. It's insane. But he, anyways, I digress. The interesting thing was, and this became part of our language, before we developed No Fear, we developed a program called Cerebral Self-Defense, the Mental Edge. And it was this idea that if we don't understand the neural circuitry of fear and how the neural circuitry of fear could blow a fuse, the mind navigates the body. If you decide to go for a run, it's not your muscle memory. Everyone likes to use the term muscle memory. Muscle memory doesn't exist in the literal sense. Your muscles don't have the capacity to store memory. What you have are neural patterns, and they're either trained or untrained. but we do have higher hardwired in us, like fight, flight, freeze, like reaction. But we don't want in a truly violent encounter to react. We want to respond. We want to make a choice. And to make the best choice possible, we need to have better self-awareness. To improve our self-awareness, we need to understand what we fear. The connection between fear management and self-awareness improves your critical thinking. If you've got good self-awareness and good critical thinking, now situational awareness is way more clear. When I interview victims of violence and I go, okay, how did you not know that this was about to happen when you could see all these pre-contact cues? Because their blinders were on, the cognitive dissonance is like, I don't want this to be happening to me. In other words, their self-awareness was obscured because they couldn't lean into fear. Every victim of violence who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack. That's the fear spike. That's your intuition whispering in your ear. And then your fear, your arrogance, your overconfidence, whatever, shuts it down and goes, not happening. Don't worry about it. A long tangent I want to come back to you as a 3-year-old running at this guy with your toy sword or whatever it was. If you said, what was that? I don't fucking know. It was a symbiotic bodyguard moment where you knew instinctively, intrinsically what the right thing to do. And you did that, and you don't recall the fear management to make that happen, but you experienced fear after imagining it. And that's an interesting thing. And I'll say this, and then I'll let you, I'll take a breath, because I'm taking a breath in 9 minutes.
It's good. It's good.
When people hire me to study fear management, whether it's for them, their family, their company, their team, and we do stuff like it's crazy. I got a no fear teams, for business teams. I got no fear coach, professional sports team. Because if you can't get in your wife's head, your husband's head, your kid's head, your staff's head, your team's head, you don't know. If you can't co-extract, like archaeologists, what the real fear is, then you're talking about everything else aside from what's really important. Because if I won't do something because deep down you peel the onion, I go, I'm just afraid to commit, and we can't get to there, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose, or if I can't get to that, we can't solve the problem, right. Certainly not in a timely fashion. But the people, when they go, okay, I'm going to do your no fear program, one of the mysterious questions is, so once I graduate, like, I won't have fear, right? And I'm like, whoa, weird. No, this is a fear management program. You will always have fear, but what we're going to teach you is to improve your self-awareness, going, aha, that was a fear spike. What is that? And if you look on my wall there, that's not some cavalier, those of you that are watching here, I've got what kind of light is that? It's not LED. What is that? I don't know. What are they? I forget the name of it. I got the light on the wall, and it's the word fuck fear, but fuck is an acronym. And the acronym is face it, understand it, control it, know it. Face it, that means don't run away from the fear. Understand it, that means research it, get educated, train on it. Depends on the fear. It'll. If you said to me, I run a company that has got multiple divisions. We've been doing millions of dollars for years straight. I've lost millions. We're one of the most trusted companies in the world. But if you give me an Excel spreadsheet, as a guy who's like an athlete, a tactical athlete, I'm the designer, I'm the creative. I'm like this I'm like, don't show me that shit. Just tell me how much we have to pay. I don't like that. I don't like that stuff.
Understood.
I use that because if I wanted to really understand P&L better and ROI and KPI and all that stuff, and I do, but if I wanted to know it better, I would just have to do a course. In other words, I would have to get educated. The C part is the most important part of the acronym, and that means control my fear, because I don't ever imagine myself being an artist my whole life going, should I have a chance to fly overseas and work privately with this military group, or I can work on the P&L and kind of do the books with the accounting team. Yeah, no, I don't ever see myself hesitating on that choice, meaning if I decided to do it, I'll always be uncomfortable with it. I don't know if this metaphor makes sense, but there are things in life, in business, in life, in relationships that we need to do afraid. Whatever that measurement is, whatever the metric is. And then once we do it, we know we can do it. And then it's just a question of reps. And now we get to know fear. And if we know fear, we can manipulate it. It becomes a fuel as opposed to our foe. Because most of us, and this is what I said before, I kind of want to like close this off and crystallize this, that growing up, I was an all-around athlete. I competed. I struggled to dominate in every sport, in any sport, because I was afraid of letting down the team or letting down my parents, or I knew I was really good, but I was afraid I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And the only way to make that right was to not perform. And then I was right. But I'd be up there going, come on, man, you can do this. You can hit a home run. Fucking I would try too hard because I couldn't find that flow state that Stephen Kotler and other, performance psychologists talk about now. What's interesting is when you interview a Navy SEAL, when you interview like an extreme athlete, these are the unicorns of society. They're not you and me, and I don't know your background, but I'm an average guy. Let's pretend you are too.
Sure.
How do we become best in class or top in? It's because we managed fear. We just never called it fear. We just did shit. And one of my missions is to change people's relationships with fear, because fear throttles everything you do, from who you talk to, therefore, who are your friends and who you marry. Fear will change how much money you can make or what job you have. It will determine how much weight you can lift. Most importantly, because I've got a selfish bias to make sure good humans are safe from violence, fear is going to determine whether you defend yourself or your family or not, or whether you're a courageous bystander. So it has a noxious effect, like carbon monoxide. You can't smell it, you don't know. But if it's there, it can impact you severely. So the job is, how do I recognize fear early, make the psychological shifts in it, use it organically to fuel my performance or what I need to do, and then get on with my life.
Well, and this happens all through life. It's not just something that happens when there's a violent episode or a violent issue. This is something that happens to people, dads, moms, every day in work. There are things that hold you back. It's not just holding and gripping that baseball bat and hoping that you swing hard and then trying too hard. People do that at work all the time. As a leader in a company, I've just finished doing a lot of reviews and strategy meetings for the year. And I can tell you that there are people that I know have way more in them to give, but fear holds them back. And what
100%.
happens is they get lost in what might happen or what might come about, if this, then that. And they're not really establishing or acting what regular guys like you and I have done. The only difference, and we won't put ourselves in the spectrum of the SEAL that's fought in a war and had fear, like Jason Redman, who's taken live fire, and people that we've talked about before, right? But we will take everyday people. It's action, it's movement, it's taking steps every day. What you just described is the control aspect is so powerful, because you have to know it. You have to acknowledge it, right? You have to face it. But most people choose to live in it. For most of my life, I've had an exercise that I utilize. I have what's called the high performance life quadrants, and life is L is love, impact is I, F is faith, and E is energy. It's how you show up. F is why, and the I is the what you do every day, and the L is your love. It's who you love, right? And what I find is I often spend anytime overwhelm, anxiety, unfocus, brain fog, fear, anything pops up, I digest it all on a piece of paper. I write it all down. And I laugh at myself most of the time because the things that you write down, you find are actually so ridiculous that you don't even believe it. When you see it, you automatically have a different logical approach to it, something that you have ignored if you kept thinking. The subconscious takes over and you can't even logically think about it. But when you put it on the page, you can't avoid the logic, right? And your process is so powerful for helping people in all aspects of life. So I understood exactly what you were saying. I followed you completely. And I love the the analogies are very lifelike. And the way I describe your sign is it's like a sign you would see in a bar, except it says "fuck fear." So the only difference is it doesn't say Budweiser. It's a cool sign underneath an American flag, which is always badass. I have one behind me. And I think it's just a great way to acknowledge it. And what I also love about you, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, is that I'm talking to one of my employees and I'm talking about doing this interview yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, that's the Blauer suit. Like, that guy's a badass. He helped to create this." And you know what it did when I was training guys on how to be better is it taught police officers, it taught military people how to actually be able to move and feel the movements in a way that they had never learned before. And so when you talk about training our police departments better, when you talk about our military soldiers being more prepared, you have to feel it. You have to actually know some level of it. And you've actually created items and action things, like real stuff, that help people cope with this, not just talking about it. You're not just a visionary, an ideologist, a professor talking about something. You're talking about it, you're teaching it, you're learning it, but you're creating shit that works. And you've been doing it since the 1980s. And I think that's awesome. And so, I'd like the listeners to have a little bit of understanding of just some of that, because these are real actionable things that work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start, because we'll run out of Zoom. Will close your account. We'll just keep going. I got jumped in 1972 by two guys, and I was 12 years old, and they were like 15, 16 at the local high school, and I just came from a baseball game where I probably struck out, but I think I hit one home run. But I was skipping back home, 12 years old, and the elementary school is about 500 yards from the high school. And these two kids are walking by and they see me. They go, "Hey, kid, come here." And I'm like, "Oh, look at these older kids want to talk to me." I actually run over to them, and they go, "Hey, is this where you go to school?" I go, "Yeah, but I'm going to high school next year." And they went, "Oh, well, welcome to high school." I go, "Thanks." And they grab me, one guy, pins my arms behind my back, and the guy starts to do like a bolo punch going, "Welcome to high school." And I'm freaking out. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, holy shit. But I'm like, I'd been wrestling for 3 years, playing sports, football, baseball. So I was in really good shape, and I'm trying to rip myself out of his arms. So like my abs are as rock hard as they can be, because I'm pulling against his arms, and everything goes into slow motion as he hits me. And I think I'm going to die. I'm scared. And as it hits me, I scream at the top of my lungs. And I think the scream surprised, well, I know the scream surprised them. And because I could feel the guy behind me. I felt his grip loosen up, like, fuck, did we hurt this guy? And my intuition at 12 said, scream again, like feign. And I didn't feel anything. So it hits me and I'm like, ah, and I feel him loosen up. And then I went, oh, and I really this hysterical gagging, like ribs had punctured my lungs and I'm dying.
Yeah.
And I felt the guy's grip loosen up, and I'm falling and fall forward. And I see them both look at each other and they fucking run. And I'm on the ground going, and I see them turn the corner. And as soon as they're gone, I stop and I go, fix my shirt. I go, what the fuck just happened? So I go home. My dad's there, and he goes, "Hey, how was the game?" I goes, "Okay." "But Dad, I just got beaten up by two guys." And he looks at me. I got my shirt's not even torn. I got no blood. I don't have a black eye. And I don't know if I imagined this, or he said, was it a pillow fight? Like, what do you mean you got beaten up by two
Yeah.
guys? But he said, I said, oh, look, I'm scared to go to high school now. These guys will see me. They're going to beat me up, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, you got to learn martial arts. There was one school that opened up, a Taekwondo school about 1.5 miles away. And I went there. I fell in love with it. And I started like every day I trained. I went every class I could. I trained every day at home. About 6 months later, Bruce Lee passed away, and it was the golden era of self-defense. And I started doing stuff. And I got really good because remember I told you I was afraid my whole life. I was a world-class skier, but I never podiumed. I mean, I was really real. I grew up, I was on skis from the time I was 3 years old. I grew up in Canada. I live in San Diego now. But I was like, I would always, and it wasn't like people go self-sabotage. I was a badass. I mean, but I would have the most, I like legendary wipeouts because I was trying so hard. Catch a tip, like just crazy shit, breaking skis. And people were like, man, you're going so fast. But somehow I could never find the balance between the emotional, psychological. And I said this earlier, and I said it really quick. Your mind navigates the body, folks. Everyone listening to this, whatever you do, you got writer's block, you can't write. Mind navigates the body. You want to propose to somebody and you can't get it out of your mouth, the mind navigates the body. You want to get a divorce, but 3 years have gone by and you can't create the conversation. You want to quit your shitty job and become an entrepreneur. You want to ask somebody for a raise. You want to ask somebody, I want to have kids. You want to go, hey, don't talk to me that way. You insert yourself. The mind navigates the body. You can't move your tongue. It's because your brain's in the fear loop. Every single problem, when someone goes through our process, every single problem, when you peel it and you drill down, there'll be a resting spot where the person just says, you know what, I'm afraid. That is the core. The only reason we have doubt and hesitation in life is because there's fear. And I like using this acronym, false expectations appearing real. It's a movie in my mind. I'm visualizing a future event that I envision or foresee as negatory, derogatory, painful, terminal, whatever. And it's impacting my decisions in the present. But it hasn't even happened. It's me just like watching this future movie. And that's what creates any level of anxiety, is imagining something in the future instead of dealing with the present.
Well, imagine,
than,
well, one quick thing just to that point. Yeah. I just want to say, I always love the saying, worry is praying for what you don't want, which means you're visualizing the negative result you don't want in your life. And what we know in success of any kind, of any high performer, of anybody that's doing anything in life, you got to visualize what you want out of life. You have to visualize what you're going to give it, what you'd like to receive out of it, how you're going to do your best. And if you spend all your time in a state of worry and fear, you're actually creating the very world that you don't want to live in. It's very powerful.
Scott, it's a great expression. And to that point, if we come back 15, 20 minutes ago, when I talked about the power of self-awareness, and everyone knows that's a superpower, but nobody has like a direct path to it. How do you create, like the things that I'm aware of now in my 60s, I wasn't aware of when I was 20, in my 30s and 40s, right? And there's that old expression, youth is wasted on the young type thing, or whatever that is. But it's a cliche because it's true. I have 3 kids, 32, 25, 21, and I send them messages and I go, hey, save this, screenshot this, save this. Because when you're older, you'll go, oh, dad tried to tell me this when I was younger, and I was like that crazy old man. Because I know, and I joke with them, I go, guys, when I send you these things to watch this podcast, listen to this, think about this, here's, they all send me like little hearts and tap it like that. And I go, but I know you're really thinking, oh, fuck, here's like another quote from dad. I go, I was in my 20s and 30s too. I thought I was invincible too. And when somebody would try to, I call it the accidental mentor. When somebody would say, hey, did you ever think about this? Part of my ego, even at an unconscious level, go, that doesn't apply to me because I got life figured out. And, but it's funny, but I love that expression, but it comes back to, you can't absorb, just like protein, fat, carbs. You can't absorb certain things if it's not organic, or if your body is not already satiated or overwhelmed with other shit, right? And so there's a saturation point, and how do you improve that self-awareness? My experience is the fastest way to improve your self-awareness is to study the psychology of fear, not the physiology of fear. Because I could say to you, and I'll give you an example. I get hired to help people with like fear of public speaking, and they go, and I'll start off, and I'll make a funny cartoony role playing thing, and they go, "Hey, can you help me with my public speaking?" I go, "Yeah, but what seems to be the problem?" "Well, I'm afraid of public speaking." "Well, it sounds like you're doing great." I go, "What are you talking about?" "Well, you're speaking in public to me, and I understand what you're saying. You're not like, They go, "Ha ha ha. This isn't public speaking. This is one-on-one." "Well, it's actually public speaking. We just met. You're speaking in public." They go, "Very funny. I get what you're doing here." I go, "So let me ask you this, like, tell me, about your family." "Oh, wife, kids. How do you like, what do you like? What do you like? You pass notes? Is it smoke signals?" Guy's like, "What are you talking about?" "Like dinner. Obviously you don't talk because you're afraid of public speaking. So what do you do?" You go like, "Well, obviously I can talk with my family." "Okay, well, tell me about work." "Well, I got a small company. We've got 10 employees. We do this. I got an outside sales force." I go, "Same thing, smoke signals, or do you like, you leave messages in the bathroom and like it's code, tradecraft?" And the guy's like, "No, we talk." I go, "But you're afraid of public speaking, so how do you do that?" What we're doing is we're peeling the onion until the guy goes, "I'm afraid of somebody in the audience, because if I don't hit this note or make this message, that could impact the perceived value of my speech, or I'm doing a sales pitch," or it always comes down to that. And when you recognize what it is, now we can begin to work. And I'll give you one other, if that didn't make sense. Hopefully
No,
that did.
that makes perfectly good sense, because what you're doing is you're teaching this person to speak. You're basically showing them that they do this every day. And when you get someone to talk about something, what they have, most people are really afraid of talking about something they don't know about. They're not afraid of actually talking about what they know and what they do every day. So you're peeling the onion down to find out exactly where
But
where the
Scott,
lock is.
to that point, and this is interesting, to that point, nobody would have to give a speech on something they didn't know about.
Exactly.
So yes, it's showing them where, and that's also the psychology behind my system is, if I show you an elbow or a headbutt or a palm strike, I'm showing you movements that you've been doing for decades. Like I go, "Have you ever done a push-up?" You go, "Yeah." I go, "Well, how many push-ups do you think you've done in your life?" I go, "I don't know. Like, do you do like one a day? Have you done like 10? Did you go through, if you're a little athletic, we all do push-ups or wall balls, or, we're stretching before a run." That's the same kinetic chain as a palm strike. So when you're afraid to do a palm strike, I go, "You've already done your 10,000 reps. Your body knows how to do it. The neural circuitry is there. The neural patterns are there. What you're struggling with is the aggression to do it into somebody's face who's about to harm you. Now we're in the fear loop. So we demystify, even in self-defense, the public speaking metaphor. So that was very intuitive of you to bring that up. But what I do is I go, "Listen, it's not, you're now going to be talking about something that you like or don't like, but you prepared your speech." When you peel the onion, they realize, well, the CEO of the company is going to be there. I've only met him once. "Okay, what's your concern there?" "Well, I really want to get promoted, and if I do a good job here, it'll do that." And now when you start talking it through, fear takes its hold on you, because fear of the known can become something manageable. It's like when you go, "Hey, I got brain fog. I'm freaking lost." You've created the discipline exercise. I'm going to write down my 4 quadrants. I'm going to get on a paper. When I look at it, I go, "You idiot." And you could roll it up and throw it in the fire,
Yeah.
or you circle something. "Oh, I'm going to do that first." You've demystified it by laying it out, and now you've got a battle plan in front of you. So it's that same protocol, but the journey is now the self-awareness piece and getting somebody to go. And this is the whole thing, is a type A personality, which is probably most of your audience and certainly my audience. That's why the joke I made back in the beginning is fear management needs new management, because like if somebody said to me, years ago, are you afraid? I go, what do you mean? What am I afraid? And this is how big self-awareness is. Have you ever walked into a room, your family, a business, a relative, and you could see somebody struggling with emotional, psychological, financial, or a health issue, and they're like, body language is 60% of communication approximately, and they're sitting there like this, and you go, hey, what's up? And they're like, nothing. Why? What's up? You okay? Yeah. Why? What's up? They have no idea that they're like, there's this rain cloud, a storm cloud over their head. And maybe a day later or a week later, they go, hey, can I talk to you? You go, yeah, what's up? This has been bothering me yeah, remember last week when I said, are you okay? But the connection here, and this is huge, and I just got goosebumps. When I work with just good people, but also companies, I point out, do you realize that managing fear also helps you manage time? That the longer you're in the fear loop, the longer you aren't performing or actualizing or moving, and time is the only resource we can't regenerate. So it's a fascinating thing where, like, if you think about how many people that you've consulted with that are now on their entrepreneurial journey, and you ask them, when did you know this job wasn't right for you? And how long did it take you to quit and then start doing your other thing? It's never like, I don't like this job, I'm quitting. It's like years, right. 7 years, 7 years, 5 years.
It's too long. It's too long. It's too long. It's like the gut that you just mentioned, how somebody that has an experience where violence happens and they had a feeling before it happened. It's the same exact thing. It's just a feeling. It's a feeling that stays for way too long until there's movement or action. And the action helps them move towards the common goal, which gets them out to the result that they're aiming for.
Yeah. And so imagine if the person who waited 5 years to start their company, and then they go, yeah, I'm making less money, but I work for myself, and this is my purpose, and this is my passion. And they're going like, I've never been happier. I go, imagine like it took you 5 years to experience this. So those of you out there going, I don't know, biting your nails, worrying, and it, to your point, the worry quote, like, I'm wishing for things I don't want, right? But it's a really convoluted protocol, because it's this dance with, okay, I'm single, she's looking at me, I'm looking at her, I'm fearing rejection, I'm hesitating. And I remember, I tell this story, Lucy was the hottest girl in school. Everyone wanted to date Lucy. And I wanted to take her to the prom. I'm 16 years old. She was in a bunch of my classes. We had mutual friends. One day I go, okay, oh my God, okay. Hey, Lucy. Hey, oh, hi, Tony. Did you want to ask me something? Yeah, are you going to be in history class later? Like, yeah, of course. Okay, see ya. And then I'm going, you idiot, like, fucking ask her. And then the next day I go, hey, yesterday I wanted to ask you, and like, I just got nervous because I thought you'd say no, but are you going with anyone to the prom? Because I'd love to go with you. And she goes, I got 6 dogs. Archer, come here and say hi. And she goes, oh my God, Tony, Bobby asked me yesterday, and I said, yes, I would have loved to go with you. And I'm like, nah. Like, if she went with Bobby, she for sure would have gone with me.
It's life.
Right? Life happens fast, man.
Yeah.
And to your point, if you can, at the first intuition to do something, create, oh, wait a minute, that's the pre-contact cue to start strategizing. But what doubt creates hesitation creates procrastination, unchecked meaning, and the only way you can lean into it is if you've got the self-awareness to go, wait a minute, my breathing just changed, my mindset just changed, my physiology has changed. The only way you can get into it is through the self-awareness, but if it's unchecked, it becomes procrastination, shifts to fixation. Unchecked fixation becomes like a non-clinical anxiety, and in some cases, anxiety. Why didn't you do this? Right? And anybody who took years to finally have kids, or finally get a dog, or finally quit a job, or finally get divorced, or finally ask for a raise, when they shift, when their energy shifts that they can make that happen, they're all like, oh my God. Like, you get good news, you're waiting for a yes, no on something. You get good news, the first thing people do is stand up and they go, oh, thank God. And I tell people, this is metaphorically the way to fear. What is the metaphoric way to fear? They go, no, what do you mean? When you get good news, you're waiting, is your loan approved? Did you get accepted at college? Did the test come back okay? Did you do whatever it is? Did she say yes? Did he say yes? When you get good news, you always stand up. There's always some sort of elevation. And I want everyone listening to this, think about that. Holy shit, that is the way to fear. Fear actually has a metaphoric weight on our psyche, and therefore our posture, emotional and literal. It's pretty crazy shit.
It is crazy. And it adds up. When you talk about procrastination, fear of failure is something that is not, it's embedded in everybody to some degree, and you have to work through it, right? So many of our listeners are dealing with it right now. But here's the key. When you just described that procrastination, what usually happens to people is you're only describing one of the 17 things they're procrastinating on.
Right.
And then as those 17 things add up, they become paralyzed in a way that they can't move. They can't take action. Whereas I got too much debt. Well, the first way to get out of debt is to start paying a little bit of it down over a course of time. Debt snowball, whatever the thing that they have to really deal with. Instead, they just keep pushing it off, and that anxiety builds up. But on the other side of anxiety is usually the success that they're aiming for. On the other end of working through that, it's that true success. It's that liberation, that freedom. There's flags behind both of us. At the end of the day, freedom from fear is probably not something that most people will ever experience. But what you're trying to teach is how to adjust, adapt, be a part of it, understand it, acknowledge it, face it, control it, and really create the tools in and around your own self-awareness to a better world, to a better day, to a better, to not missing the chance. You just described what most men have felt in their lives. And that feeling, everybody's felt that, where they've wanted something so bad that they almost would rather go quiet and not do it, because the fear of failure is worse than the result of something positive, of actually getting it. And that sucks. It's a crappy way to live. It's so much better just to go after it and fail and figure it out from there.
And if I can piggyback on that, if you fail at something, life's the lesson, you're the student, but you get to grade the paper. Life doesn't give you the grade. You go, I showed up, but I wasn't prepared. And so I'm going to give myself an A for effort, but I'm going to give myself an F in preparation. I should have done my homework. Or, you got through something and you did okay, but you're now worrying about if that event happens again, and you realize, you know what? I'm going to give myself an A for improvisation, but I'm giving myself like a D- on preparation. And then you start to realize, like the quadrants and there are things that you can do. Face it, understand it, control it, know it. The understand part is the research. And now you might go, oh, I can't fake endurance. I can't fake stamina. I can't fake a competence. Everyone can fake confidence, but you can't fake competence. And it's a subtle distinction. I don't know if I beat this into the ground enough, but I want to say it again. There are lots of things in life we need to do scared. But the operative word is need to do. And so if you go through, and this is my whole thing. No one ever said to me when I was young, it's okay to be afraid. You can be up at bat afraid. But I was so afraid of the fear that I couldn't connect the neural pathways to the skill set because it was almost like you're at bat and I'm like right on your shoulder going, Scott, you suck. Don't strike out. And you're like, shut up, man, shut up. Oh, fuck, I just missed the pitch. Because you're having and I've had those conversations. I've been in confrontations where I'm going, he's too close to kick. Okay, Alex said if he catches anyone fighting, my instructor in the school, you're kicked out. You don't want to get kicked. Oh, fuck, you just punch. As opposed to just being in the zone, going, okay, you're about to get in a fight. Focus on what you need to do. What you need to do. That's a silly metaphor. I want to share this quick story if I can.
Please.
I got a call from an athlete who said, I heard you're the Anthony Robbins of self-defense to me. I said, okay, cool, thanks. You know, like, she goes, meaning like performance, psychology, fear. And she says, I've got a competition on Saturday. I've been a professional athlete for 10 years. And like on Wednesday night, the fear hits me. I can't eat, I can't sleep properly. And I know, just as an educated athlete, that sleep deprivation and not consuming the right, proteins and carbs and fats means that on Saturday, I can't perform in my optimal. Can you help? I go, yeah. So tell me, what do you mean the fear comes Wednesday night? She says, like Wednesday night, when I start going, okay, I'm 3 days out, it's almost like this dark force comes in the house. And I'm like, I can feel my physiology change. And I'm going, oh, fuck, I'm going to be up all night. And I dread it. And I honestly, she says, it's like I'm going to die. I go, really? That potent? She goes, yeah, like I feel like I'm going to die. I'm so scared. I'm like nervous. I want to fucking, sometimes I feel like I want to throw up. I can't eat. I go, okay, so listen. And I take out a pen and I go like this and I go, pretend I'm writing. I go, so the program that I'm going to design for you, I need some very specific data. So 10 years you've had this, right? I pretend to write down 10. And then I go, and you feel like you're going to die, right? She goes, yes. It's a strong emotion. She goes, I know. I go, so in the last 10 years, how many times have you died? And she goes, what? I go, how many times have you died from this? She goes, well, I'm just saying metaphorically I die. Oh, I thought you literally died from this fear. Okay, so let me cross that out. So she's like looking at me on Zoom, Scott, and I go, here's what I want you to do. And she's like confused. I go, it's Wednesday today, so fear's going to come in tonight, like the ghost of Christmas, right? I go, here's what I want you to do. I want you to anticipate its arrival. And I want you to, I go, do you have a favorite old movie? Gone with the Wind? I don't care what it is. She goes, yeah. I go, you got some favorite books? Atlas Shrugged, I don't know, some classic. She goes, yeah. I said, get your favorite book and your favorite movie ready. And when you feel your physiology, your parasympathetic shifting to sympathetic, I want you to immediately turn towards what you imagine the force of fear. And I said, with your finger like this, come here. I want you to say, come here, you little fucker. I've been waiting for you. And I want you to welcome it and go, we're going to watch a movie tonight. And when I'm tired of the movie, we're going to read a little bit. Fuck you, sit down. And she goes, like, are you serious? I go, yeah. In fact, let me see you role play. And she goes, and she's laughing. Come here, little. I go, do that. I said, call me tomorrow. Tell me what happened. She calls me in the morning. I get goosebumps now. She goes, I don't remember falling asleep. I had a good night's sleep. Holy shit. You need to fuck with fear. It needs to be, if your body is in this metaphor, if your body is your car and your mind is your destination and the journey and your goals and your nav system, fear is the fuel. Because if you're going somewhere outside your comfort zone, which is the only way to grow as a human, the only way to self-actualize, you want to be like a better dad, a better husband, a better athlete, you got to do things that push you outside your comfort zone. And anytime you go outside your comfort zone, if it's truly outside your comfort zone, you're going to be a little bit nervous. There's going to be a moment where you go, okay, I'm going to run a little bit longer today. I'm going to lift a little bit more weight today. I'm going to talk to a bigger audience. I'm going to make more phone calls, whatever it is. And like that's that metaphor. There's my car is my body. My mind is a nav system. And in terms of growing, fear is the fuel. I need the fear. And it's either the backseat driver going, you're going to miss your turn. You're not driving fast enough. You're going to suck. Or you tell it to buckle up Hey, you're part of the system. We're going fast, and you hit the gas and you go.
I
So
always
that's
had
a
a
fun little metaphor.
I always had a tendency with my kids. They're 16 and 13 now, and they play competitive soccer and at pretty high levels. And both of them, you know, when we would get to the game, mainly not both of them all the time, but you know, enough when they're young. They're 5, 6, 7, and they'd start to say, "I'm nervous, Dad," or "I'm uncomfortable," or you have those butterflies in your stomach, right?
Sure.
And I would say, well, tell me what it feels like. And they'd say, well, my stomach's uncomfortable. I don't want to eat anything. I don't want to drink. It's similar to the professional athlete. And I
Sure.
would say, well, let me tell you what always works for me. I never didn't have those butterflies. I don't care if I was an adult playing adult men's league soccer at 41 years old. I get up to take the kickoff and I feel the exact same way that
Yep.
you do right now at 5 years old. But here's what I've done. I've told myself that I'm not nervous, I'm excited. It's
Beautiful.
there. The same feeling is there, but the change of nervous to the word excitement has always altered and adjusted my mindset.
Beautiful.
And I really, and I'd love to know your point on this, and if there's any input. But I feel like today so many parents are spending so much time welcoming the fear and then making an excuse why it's taking over, instead of actually helping their children cope with what's going to come in the real world. And the real world is going to constantly have things that you get nervous
Sure.
about, uncomfortable about, and comfortable about, and fear and anxiety have to be met with some level of courage. You say that fear is contagious, but so is courage.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we start teaching that we can convert that into some level of courage and facing it, it's a whole different movement, not just for people that have dealt with major things, not just for self-defense, but for every kid that we're teaching to grow up the right way, to not be caught in this anxious, uncomfortable, I can't solve my own problems world.
Yeah. That was a great rant, man. Listen, fear has been weaponized in the last few years. We've never seen anything like it. And so it's almost normal to feel fear. And we already fear. So to feel it, but it's everywhere. You turn everywhere, every tweet, every Instagram, and you don't even know it's real anymore. So it's mind boggling. So critical thinking doesn't exist for most of the planet because they're living in the fear loop. And they're trusting all the propaganda. At the end of the day, the only way we can save ourselves and our families is to teach them self-awareness, critical thinking, situational awareness. That's the tactical trinity for, creating decisions. What am I going to do next? Fear is contagious, but so is courage. I love this. Is right out of our No Fear program. I'd love to share this with your audience. And it's one of my favorite lines, and it might be your next tattoo or your first one if you haven't gotten anyone.
It would have to be my first. I fear the
right?
tattoo.
You fear the tattoo,
Yeah.
but this will be like one across your neck, your first one.
Okay, all right.
But it's you can't be brave if you're not afraid. The primary ingredient in courage, if this was a glass full of courage, the only thing in it would be fear. If you do something and I go, Scott, that was so courageous. And you go, what do you mean? I just did this. It's not courageous at all. That's something I've always been able to do that. Then we can't agree that was courage. Like if there was no fear to do it. And so this is an interesting thing. If I said to you, would you like to be brave if the time required you to be brave? Yeah. Would you like to exhibit courage? Why would somebody say, no, I don't want to be brave? Right? We all want, but this idea, and it's funny. So first of all, kudos to you, Dad, because if you were my dad, I'd have had a different experience growing up. Like seriously, just the shift of, when that female athlete said, fear is going to kill me. And I said, fuck fear. You're going to face it. You're going to understand it. You're going to control it. You're going to know it, and call me tomorrow. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to control the fear. It's going to be there. You're going to feel it. But the shift that you did was intuitively the same thing. Words are icons. and the word that I choose to think is going to have a different impact on my psyche, my nervous system. So if I go, like, I grew up when I had butterflies in my stomach, and this is my line, it's like, again, like it's something out of my talk. I would think, everyone says I'm so good, but if I'm so good, why am I so scared? And that was, I've said that line and had adults start to cry in the class because they go, oh my God, that was me too. I thought I was good. I knew I was good. I could do it in front of the mirror, but then I'd get out there going, man, I just want to projectile vomit. You know, people don't realize Mike Tyson used to cry and throw up before some of his fights. George St. Pierre, now that he's retired, some people, like, the scariest days of his life was every time he had to fight. He hated it. But you would never, him jumping across the ring with 4% body fat, doing the first Superman punch into somebody's face. If I said to you, that guy was terrified like 15 minutes ago, you go, what are you talking about? We don't realize that these high performers have figured out how to manage their fear. And that's really, what it's about. But, what you did with your kids is magical because it changed their experience. And now they are experiencing success in sports because you taught them at an early age. The butterflies is just excitement and arousal and adrenaline and you're anxious to get the game started. You're not anxious with anxiety. You're like, let's get going, let's move, tired of waiting.
And they acted. I mean, at the end of the day, we all get taught lots of stuff. We know a ton of shit, but whether or not we actually do it is what I'm most proud of as a father, is when they execute it. Last year in a state quarterfinal game, my son's taking one of the penalty kicks. He takes the penalty kick, sinks it. They go to sudden death. They have two kids. Him and another kid are begging to take the next one. And I'm genuine. You want to talk about fear? My gut is all in knots. I got my best friend from childhood next to me, my parents, everybody. And my son gets up. If he makes this kick, they win. If he misses it, they got to go to another round. But now he's had to take two. Right. I can't even fathom. You talk about your story of being a kid and kind of thinking that. I can't even fathom that. What I'm most proud of is not that they actually listened to me, but they actually acted on it. And he, that taught me something, that showed me something. Yeah. And I love thinking, I get goosebumps thinking about that as a dad, but we do the best we can. We're imperfect parents. It's our job as humans to take what we know and execute upon it. And that means that even if you had a really shitty upbringing, even if life has been really unfair to you up to this point, there's always a chance to take control and choose a better life for yourself in the future. And what you're teaching people is really that glass of courage comes from fearing the fire that they're going in to save the baby from. I'm scared that the baby could die in the fire. So I go into the home to change the baby's life. From a state of fear, I went in and pulled them out. And so to drink the glass of courage that's filled with fear, I love that. You got to acknowledge it and manage it. And I think we could talk for days, but I did promise you that you could get some lunch at some point in time before your next appointment. So, Coach Tony, I can't be happier to have this conversation. I feel like we are starting something great, because I'm going to talk to you a lot more in the future, and hopefully we can build something where I can learn more from you, and you can help me grow in anything I'm doing. And I love these conversations because everyone listening today got something out of that. They all face fear. They all want to learn how to take your acronym of fuck fear and turn it into something special. And how do they find you? What do you want the audience to know if they need to grab anything from you? You have a multitude of businesses. What's the best way to get you?
So go to my Blauer Training Systems site. That's, so if you go, wait a minute, you might have somebody listening who's a firefighter, a cop, military, security, or into martial arts, but you'll see my coaching vertical, my our no fear options, our gear, the high gear, and the spear system for self-defense. But I'm on all the platforms, LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. I do have an ebook called Making Friends with Fear, and it took me 43 years to write these 9 pages. I make that joke all the time listen, this is the information age. It's total transparency. You go there, you click it, you download it, you give us your email, and I'm going to try and sell you shit. But if you listen to me for an hour talking to Scott, you know, like, this isn't a gimmick. This is real shit, and it can change your life. Get the Making Friends with Fear PDF and read it, because it's a more I don't want to say comprehensive, but because you're reading it and it's linear, it's like you talking about the quadrants and writing down, the acronym and filling it out. When you read it sequentially, you realize, holy shit. And all of you will get wicked light bulb moments going, oh shit, I could do this, I could do this, I do this. If you want more, there's a digital course. If you want more and you want to bring me or my team in to talk or do a Zoom talk or whatever the heck, we do all that. One of my missions is to help people change their relationship with fear. I know that my life would have been different all through each decade and phase. If you all know this, that people who are very successful in school as athletes did differently in dating and business and getting job offers. And that's just the way of the world. That confidence was contagious. And how do we do that for our kids? If you're a parent, how do you do what you did there? What you did was masterful, and congratulations. It's whether even if your kid missed the penalty kick, he didn't hide behind another player when the coach said, who wants to take this kick? He didn't. He was like, his body language was, pick me, coach. And the coach knew that because he picked him. And that's amazing. Congrats on that. But that was because you didn't. When he said, Dad, I'm afraid, you didn't pass on your fear. You gave him something tangible and actionable, because you could have accidentally said, oh, maybe a little bit nervous here. Have a sip of water.
Yeah.
Honey, does he have a fever? Like is something wrong? Like, you turned it around. It was amazing. And that's that whole thing, is like the message. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. So, everyone read that Making Friends with Fear book. Total transparency. Know that it's going to put you in a funnel. And then I'm going to ask you, hey, do you want to buy the digital program? I could tell you stories of life-changing stories of people who've done it who I've never met, but that's just me selling shit.
Listen, if they're downloading the book, Tony, they want the funnel. If they're downloading the ebook, they want more information. We can't get upset at the things that come about when we know the result that we're aiming for. What we're really upset at is that we won't freaking act. That's really what people get upset. They're not upset they're getting the email. They're upset that they can't afford the program, or they can't take it to the next level, or they're upset with another stage of their life. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're doing what you're supposed to do, which is telling them how to be better.
Right. And what's funny about that, the irony is the hesitation of actually downloading the ebook or buying the No Fear digital or calling my company and going, I'd like to book an hour with Blauer, is fear.
Yeah, it is. So today, hopefully the listeners got that. Coach Tony, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for having an awesome conversation. I look forward to having many more in the future with you.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.